You are listening to episode 72 of the Style and Stewardship podcast. In this episode, I'm talking about something that I think you're going to find interesting. I know I did years ago when I first heard this term, and it is the doctrine of signatures. And it's really, really fascinating. I think that it is truly one of those things that points right back to God. So stick around. You're listening to the Style and Stewardship podcast. So what is stewardship? That is exactly what we'll be talking about in each and every episode of this podcast. As Christ followers, I think it's so important that we manage every single area of our lives to the best of our ability. Not perfectly, but intentionally in our own unique way, and holding on to God's grace every single step of our journey. On this podcast, I'll be sharing thoughts, things that God's teaching me, and transparent talks. My hope is that when you listen, you'll feel equipped, you'll be encouraged, and more than anything, I hope that you're inspired to live out your day-to-day calling in your own unique way. This podcast is for the woman who wants to hear, "Well done." I probably sound like a broken record, but what we eat affects every part of our body, and how we live, how we sleep, all of those things, our stress response, our ability to handle stress, all of those things, the different functions that our body has to do to keep us healthy and to keep us well are extremely important, which is why I'm always talking about that on this podcast. And when it all comes down to it, I truly believe that God created things that were to help us thrive and to help us in our wellness and to help us to physically be supported by the things that He created. Obviously, I'm talking about all of the things He created. So, from the sun to the soil to the plants that grow. And that is specifically what we'll be talking about today. So, there is a term called the doctrine of signatures, or it may be called like equals like, or like supports like. And what that is referring to are all of the things in the herbal side of things, so plant life, fruit from trees, roots, vegetables, leaves, things of that nature that actually support the body. And these quote unquote signatures were what God allowed for us to understand the use that a particular plant would support in our bodies. So I'm going to read something I thought was really cool. And there was I want to say he was British, but he created this book, and we're talking about circa 1626. And it was based off this theory. And this has gone through, different centuries. It has been approached by different people in different parts of the world. Some people think that this came from China. Other people are sure that it came from Rome. So in Britain, it's a whole thing. I don't have all of those exact I don't have all of that exact information, but I saw a quote and I thought that it was really good, and it's by William Coles. And he writes, "Though sin and Satan have plunged mankind into an ocean of infirmities, yet the mercy of God, which is over all his works, maketh grass to grow upon the mountains, and herbs for the use of men, and hath not only stamped upon them a distinct form, but also given them particular signatures, whereby a man may read, even in legible characters, the use of them." And I thought that that was really incredible. Um, and basically, the different foods and fruit that I'm going to talk about right now look like the body parts that they support. And I just think this is absolutely fascinating. I was going to talk about something completely different, and I just thought I need to share this because I always find it really, really interesting. You can actually pull some of this stuff up online, and you can just type in doctrine of signatures, and it'll pull up, different graphs and different infographics that will show you the different parts of plants or fruit or nuts, whatever, that support that particular body part. And even though science is like, and one of the things that I've learned on being on the more holistic side of things, I look at things, as a whole picture when it comes to our wellness and how we're eating, how we're sleeping, our lifestyle, our stress, our hydration, all of those things. I don't think that anything is in one isolated area, even though it may show up in an isolated area. I am not a doctor, but when I read medical journals and when I read what other doctors have published, what I find really interesting is the more integrative side of things truly makes the most sense, because though there are different doctors that specialize in different areas of the body, so cardiologists for the heart, you know what I mean, oncology for those who are going through cancer, um, you know, there's so many internists, there's so many different specializations when it comes to the medical field, and that's amazing. We want people to be specialized. However, all of our body is a whole. So our mind, our body, our skin, our heart, every single organ, our blood cells, all of these things, our joints, you get where I'm going. We are one person. We are not all these several, separate pieces. So I don't think we should ever think that none of these things work together. Nor do I believe that God hasn't created things to help us thrive and grow and to be well. Is this forever? No. But while we're here, we can eat well and make better, the best choices that we can so that we can feel well, because I think that impacts, I know that impacts every other part of our lives. So, all of that to say, take for example, walnuts are a big one. Walnuts, if you crack one open, there's even what looks like a line down the middle, which looks very similar to the left and right hemisphere of the brain. And walnuts are good for the brain. If you cut a carrot, the middle of that carrot looks very similar to an eye. And because of the beta carotene, it supports what? The eye. Tomatoes look like the heart, and when you cut it open, the little cell lines inside, use your imagination, but you don't have to, I don't think you have to use too much of your imagination. It's definitely there. Looks like the ventricles in the heart. And guess what? Lycopene, which is also what gives it that red pigment, is good for the heart. Celery, if you look at just the stalks of the celery and you were to look at a picture of a skeleton, it looks like bones. Specifically to me, it looks kind of like a femur. But celery actually supports your bones. Ginger. If you've ever had a stomach ache, if you've ever been around me and had a stomach ache, I'm giving you ginger. I'm giving you ginger chews. Every day I have tea with actual sliced, just big chunks of ginger in the bottom of it, and I let that steep because it is amazing for your digestive tract. And guess what it looks like? It looks like the stomach. Sweet potato. Sweet potato is shaped like your pancreas. And as we talked about on the episode with balancing your blood sugar, you know that the pancreas actually has beta cells that send out that signal for insulin, which tries to regulate how much sugar or carbohydrate, glucose, gets into your bloodstream. So it regulates that. And sweet potatoes have a particular type of carbohydrate that does not get as quickly into the bloodstream as, say, some other starchy vegetable would. So it supports your pancreas. Avocados. look like the uterus, and they have folic acid, which we know is great if you are conceiving or trying to, if you've conceived, if you're trying to conceive, or if you're pregnant. This is something, I mean, one of the first things that the doctor would tell you to do is to take a prenatal that has folic acid in it to to make sure that there you don't your child doesn't have a chance of having spina bifida or other things like that, neural tube issues. Let's see. Ginseng. If you've ever looked at ginseng and it has like these weird kind of projections out of it that almost look like arms and legs, it supports the entire body. Onions look like actual cells in the body, and they support, guess what? The cells of your body. And since they contain sulfur, they actually fight against free radicals and things that cause cancer. Beets. They are blood red, and if you were to slice them into rounds, they actually resemble blood cells. So, those are just a couple. And there are other herbs and leaves and roots that look like, I didn't look up all of them, but this has been going on for centuries. This idea that before we had doctors that could look inside of you, people relied on what something looked like. We do this now too, but we're so far removed from, farming and agriculture. We're no longer like an agricultural society. And, the Industrial Revolution, all of that stuff. And we've got technology and all of those things. We're in a different era of time. But a lot of those things, if you and I were to go out into, God forbid, we'd be stranded in the woods somewhere. I don't know that I could help you. Because I don't like bugs, and I'm not trying to camp. Anyways, I'm a city girl. So you would want to know what herbs are poisonous. You would want to know what you should and shouldn't eat. Are those berries the kind that will kill you, or are those berries the kind that have antioxidants and will actually help your body if you consume them? So whether it's from a standpoint of herbs, which we'll get into in another episode, or the standpoint of different fruit and vegetables and different things that they support, it is absolutely fascinating. And I think that we can't ignore what God has created and think that it has, no bearing on how we feel. Or, it's what I'm talking about with food all the time. I'm saying, we should be more thoughtful about what we eat. And not that we're going to be perfect or anything like that. But with the knowledge, I truly believe that it's empowering the more that we understand food and the more that we understand what God created for food. So I remember my husband, he said this not long ago, and he said, all the old people were right. And I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, there was a guy named Jack LaLanne way, way back in the day, like my grandmother's time. And he was extremely popular back then because he did the opposite of what everybody was telling you to do. And one of his famous sayings, my husband was reminding me, was, if man made it, don't eat it. Or if man made it, spit it out, or something like that. I'm pretty sure it was, if man made it, don't eat it. And when you look around at everything that we do, we're way more concerned with um, who says that something is quote unquote healthy for us, as opposed to, I just feel like we've gotten so far away from the common sense aspect of eating food that we have truly just turned it into something that we just do, as opposed to something that's like, even when I'm reading scripture, like, I'm like, food was a big deal. Like, food's a big deal for us too, like Thanksgiving, and especially around Thanksgiving. We come around and we gather and we spend all day cooking. And I think one of the reasons why we get so excited about that, and I'm thinking about that because, November is literally, my goodness, just days away, is because the effort and the thoughtfulness and the purpose, like how purposeful we are on, that that Thanksgiving weekend to make food and to sit around with people that we love, hopefully, and enjoy company and break bread with one another and bring different dishes. And we're so stinking intentional about, if you eat pumpkin pie or sweet potato pie. I grew up eating sweet potato pie, and my husband grew up eating pumpkin pie. And it wasn't until we got married and he requested it that I made it, and I was like, "You know what? This is actually pretty tasty." So I have been making it every year since, and we've been married for 13 years. And I thought this is really, really good. I still make sweet potato pie though. But we pass on these traditions and these recipes that we have, and we're so thoughtful about that. But when it comes to our regular, just everyday life, many times, unless you're on a diet or you have some sort of crazy allergies like I do, you're just not that thoughtful about food. It's something that you have to do, as opposed to a privilege and a blessing to be able to do it. And I think that we're just missing the respect of what we're putting in our bodies many times. And we've gotten so far away from what real food actually is and what it looks like. So I just thought, let me share this doctrine of signatures. And if you're anything like me, sometimes you need to hear something in a different way to get it, or sometimes it just needs to be presented in a way that you hadn't thought about it before for things to kind of stick. So that's what this episode is about. This is just an encouragement, just in the way that God created our bodies. And whether you think this is quote unquote true or not, there are nutrients in all of these foods that support the very thing that they look like. And I cannot help but believe that it's a God thing. And if God made it, obviously it's a God thing. You know what I mean? But I just, just like glory to God that even if someone couldn't read, or even if someone had never read a book before or been told something was healthy or not healthy, even children, if you watch them, they get excited about colorful things. And you know what we eat a lot, especially in our Western culture? We eat a lot of beige food. We eat a lot of brown food, and we eat a lot of pink food. So whether that is, a bun of some kind, a bowl of oatmeal of some kind, things that are processed and in packages and in boxes and things like that are typically, like a brown or beige, or it's deep fried. And it's just, we eat a lot of beige food. There might be a little red and yellow. I'm not red and yellow, red and green on your burger or on your, maybe you ate a salad today. Well, I'm not telling you all these things are just absolutely horrific, but I'm just making the point that we've gotten away from what makes food food, and the enjoyment and the intentionality about it, and just eating with the purpose to actually fuel and feed our bodies so that we can do what we're called to do, and so that we can have the energy to do those things. So that is my encouragement today, is to just be intentional about what you're eating or how you're eating, and thinking about the fact that God created so many things for us to be well, and to support the body he made, which is pretty amazing. The things that God has created our bodies to be able to do is mind-boggling. So I'm going to share a couple more about these some of the ones that I've mentioned, just so you know specifically what they help, because it's just really fascinating. So let's take beets, for example. Beets are, if you've ever touched a beet, opened, my grandmother used to eat canned beets, which were very, very weird. I get them now from Costco, and they're in the refrigerated section. They're already peeled. And I always have to put gloves on whenever I touch them, because beets stain. And when they stain your fingers, it looks like you have been bleeding. Also, interesting is that it's rich in iron, right? They can help your hemoglobin, which is your red blood cell. That transports oxygen to your body. It creates nitric oxide and helps oxygenated red blood cells get to the rest of your body. That's pretty amazing to me. And it looks like blood. So, coincidence? I don't think so. And then you have onions. I talked about onions already. They shield the cells from damage caused by free radicals. And since they contain sulfur, which anything that contains sulfur is going to be anti carcinogenic, which is going to fight cancer development in the body. So, those are things like cabbage, anything that contains sulfur, broccoli. You can usually smell it and know what I'm talking about. Brussels sprouts, all of those things. Do those things I mean, they protect your cells. That's my point. Tomatoes, already talked about that. They're great for reducing blood pressure. Um, let's see, grapes, they actually look like lung alveoli and they actually protect your lungs, which is crazy. Coconuts, if you've ever seen a fresh coconut, it even has like hair on the outside, but they look like heads and they are amazing for brain health. They contain something called MCTs, which if you've ever seen MCT oil or had a bulletproof coffee, you know what I'm talking about. MCT oil just stands for medium chain triglycerides, and that's a specific type of fat that is very high in coconut oil, along with some other amazing things. Don't get me started. Coconuts are freaking amazing, but they can actually help prevent someone with Alzheimer's from having um, just issues with brain function. It helps them improve the brain function. So imagine what it does as far as preventing. Let's see, organ meat. So organ meat, it may gross you out. I have had organ meat. I've had it like freeze dried in capsules, grass fed, grass finished, that kind of thing. But the very organs of the animals that you eat actually support those very same organs in your body. If you do this, I always do a grass-fed, grass-finished, organic source, and I get it freeze-dried. I've seen other people do, like, actual, like, whole chunks of liver. Don't do that. I mean, you can do that if you want to. I'm not gonna do that. I get mine in pill form. So also your muscle meats. So when we're talking about eating the actual, that's typically what we eat in this country. A lot of other countries eat the whole from, they say, from the nose to tail. I haven't gotten that bold yet, but I'm one of those. I wouldn't call myself a wellness junkie, but I have tried a lot of stuff. I have not eaten every single part of the animal though. But if as far as the muscles, what do we do when we say we want to work out and we want to build muscle? What do we eat? We eat you may not have even thought about it before, but you're eating the muscle portion of an animal. It's pretty interesting. And those are the things what support your muscles. So we're kind of doing these things even without being conscious of it, or maybe we've never even heard of the doctrine of signatures. All of these things super fascinating. I would love to know what you think, and just having something else to consider as you're eating and as you're purchasing food from the grocery store. God has created so many different things for us to be well and for us to prevent certain things. And a lot of times, a lot of the man-made things, we're not getting any of that. So eating the rainbow is amazing. All of those different colors. I mean, just like talking about beets, for example, I made a beet salad because I didn't really care for beets, but I made a beet salad and I put some tart apple in there and I put carrot and I made like a salad out of it. And I threw a little apple cider vinegar and it was really, really, really good. So sometimes it's just tweaking things and trying to find a way to get some of these really, really health supporting things into your diet. It could be making little, I call them like little energy shots or whatever. You can find them at, like, if you go to Trader Joe's, If you go to a store like Lidl or Aldi, there will be these little tiny jars, and there will be like a shot of like ginger and cayenne, not ginger and cayenne, but ginger and I think lemon for vitamin C. I think they probably do that to preserve it too. I'm not sure. But you can make things like that at home. You don't always necessarily have to do that, but it is a good place to start if you want to just start incorporating some of these things to boost your immune system, especially around this time, and to also just give your body the support that it needs that it may not be getting from the things that you're eating right now. A lot of the things that we're eating now are fortified. They don't naturally have these good things in them. So, until next time, your life matters. What you do with it matters. So, what will you steward well?